Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, June 5th, 2018. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
President Breed.
Here.
Breed, present. Supervisor Cohen. Here. Cohen, present. Supervisor Fewer. Present. Fewer, present. Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Kim. Here. Kim, present. Supervisor Peskin.
Present.
Peskin, present. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, present. Supervisor Safai. Safai, present. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, present. Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, present. Supervisor Tang. Tang, not present. Supervisor Yee. Yee, not present. Madam President, you have a quorum.
Supervisor Tang is now present. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any communications?
There is, Madam President. The Clerk of the Board is in receipt of correspondence from the Mayor on June 1st, 2018, communicating notice under Charter Section 4.132 of transfers of functions between departments within the executive branch. The reorganization shall become effective 30 days after its issuance, unless disapproved by the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Colleagues, today we're approving the meeting minutes from April 24th and May 1st, as well as the Special Budget and Finance Committee meeting minutes of May 3rd. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Moved by Supervisor Peskin. Is there seconded by Supervisor Sheehy? Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will be approved after public comment. Madam Clerk, let's go to the consent agenda.
Items 1 through 5 comprise the consent calendar, and these are considered routine matters. If a member objects, an item may be severed and considered separately.
Roll call vote.
Supervisor Stephanie.
Aye.
Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, absent. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer.
Aye.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Kim. Aye. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin. Aye. Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan.
Aye.
Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Aye. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy.
Aye.
Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Yee. Aye. Yee, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, let's go to item number 6 and call item number 6 and 7 together.
Item number 6 is an ordinance approving the issuance and sale of refunding lease revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed approximately $41.3 million payable from the Park and Rec Open Space Fund to refinance lease revenue bonds previously issued to refinance various park projects, approving the form of a second lease to the site lease, a second amendment to the master lease, a second supplemental trust agreement, an assignment agreement, an official notice of a sale and a notice of intention to sell, a purchase contract, an official statement, a continuing disclosure certificate, and ratifying previous actions taken. And item number 7 is an ordinance approving the issuance and sale of refunding lease revenue bonds by the City and County of San Francisco Finance Corporation in an amount not to exceed approximately $26.5 million to refinance lease revenue bonds previously issued to refinance various projects under the Branch Library Improvement Program.
Colleagues, can we take those items, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinances are finally passed unanimously. Next item, please.
Item number 8 is a resolution responding to the recent proposal to expand the private marina located in Clipper Cove at Treasure Island and reaffirming San Francisco's commitment to public recreation, public education, environmental protection, preservation of public open space, and social equity.
It's my understanding. Supervisor Kim?
Thank you, President Breed. First of all, colleagues, I want to appreciate all of your patience as we've asked you for several continuances to get to where we are today. But I do just want to say that the developer and several of our stakeholders from Save Clipper Cove have finally come to an agreement, which I'm very excited about. This is something that we've been in discussions with over 2 years, so it's really great to see this finally come to a closure. I will summarize the changes, but I first want to thank the Sierra Club, Friends of the Sailing Center, U.S. Sailing, the Raft Up Community, existing tenants of the marina, San Francisco Baykeeper, Coalition of San Francisco Neighborhoods, the 4th and 5th grade teachers and families who reached out to us that are part of the Sailing Center, and the developer, represented by Jay Wallace, along with Bob Beck, our director from the Treasure Island Development Authority, and of course, Hunter Cutting, Save Clipper Cove, who I know colleagues have gotten many emails about this issue over the last 2 years. I want to summarize the major changes of which we've handed out copies to each member of the board. On page 2, line 19, we included in your packet as Exhibit A, it's a new-to-scale drawing of the marina, which is now a smaller footprint than the developer had originally proposed. The developer estimates the project will go down from 400 to 225 slips. The rationale for this is to ensure that interim uses for the cove that have come to define the cove continues, including the Treasure Island Sailing Center, of which many of our schools, families, and students have grown to love and have become a part of our educational curriculum. This footprint also allows for beginning sailors to be at the heart of the cove, along with high school racing teams. The additional space will allow for a more robust use of the cove for 4th grade SFUSD STEM classes to do ecology of the bay while studying the physics of sailing. I've made a couple of other amendments which are now part of the record. City Attorney Givner, do I have to list all of these? Okay, great. So colleagues, if I may, I'd like to ask for you your support to motion to amend this item, and then your full support for the final resolution. So I'm going to make a motion to amend as stated on the resolution.
Supervisor Kim has made a motion to amend, seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Colleagues, can we take the amendments without objection? Without objection, the amendments passed. Supervisor Kim, that's it?
That's it.
Okay, on the item as amended, can we take that same House, same call? Without objection, the resolution as amended is adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, call items 9 through 14 together.
Items 9 through 14 are revenue bond and appropriation ordinances. Item 9 is an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of tax-exempt or taxable power revenue bonds by the PUC in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed approximately $155 million to finance the costs of various capital projects benefiting the power enterprise. This matter requires 9 votes to approve. Item 10 is an ordinance appropriating approximately $1.2 billion of proceeds from revenue bonds, state loan funds, or state grant funds, wastewater revenue and capacity fees for PUC's wastewater enterprises capital or state grant funds or state improvement program for fiscal year 2018-2019 at approximately $707 million, for 2019-20 at approximately $511 million, and placing approximately $987 million on Controller's Reserve. Items 11 and 12 are ordinances authorizing the issuance and sale of tax-exempt or taxable water revenue bonds by the PUC, with item 11 for an aggregate principal amount not to exceed approximately $478 million to finance the cost of various capital water projects benefiting the water enterprise, and item 12 for an aggregate principal amount not to exceed approximately $987 million to finance the cost of various capital wastewater projects benefiting the wastewater enterprise. These ordinances require 8 votes to approve. And items 13 and 14 are appropriation ordinances, with item 13 appropriating a total of approximately $340 million of Hetch Hetchy revenue, cap and trade revenue, and power and water revenue bonds for the PUC Hetch Hetchy Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year 2018-19 at approximately $141 million, and for fiscal year 2019-20 at approximately $200 million, and placing approximately $155 million of power bonds, $102 million of water bonds on Controller's Reserve. And item 14 appropriates approximately $483 million of proceeds from revenue bonds, state loan funds, or state grant funds, water revenues, and water capacity fees for the PUC's Water Enterprises Capital Improvement Program for fiscal year 2018-19 at approximately $276 million, fiscal year 2019-20 at approximately $207 million, reappropriating capital water capital project appropriations of approximately $16 million in 2018-19, and placing approximately $376 million of revenue bond and state loan funds or state grant funds proceeds by project on Controller's Reserve.
Colleagues, can we take those items, same House, same call? Without objection, those items are approved unanimously. Item number 15.
Item number 15 is a resolution authorizing the public library to accept and expend a grant in the amount of up to approximately $813,000 of in-kind gifts, services, and cash monies from the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library for direct support for a variety of public programs and services in fiscal year 2018-19.
Same House, same call. Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item.
Item 16 is a resolution approving a transfer of up to $4 million to the general fund for overpayments and duplicate payments received by the city for parking in transit violations issued between January 1st, 1994 and June 30th, 2016.
Same House, same call. Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item.
Item 17 is a resolution authorizing substitution of a letter of credit offered by Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation in an amount not to exceed $100 million to support MTA's commercial paper program to provide interim financing for capital improvements, approving the forms of certain financing documents and making appropriate findings.
Same House, same call. Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item.
Item 18 is a resolution authorizing the lease for 1305-1309 Evans Street with Raul and Denise Ariaza for a 5-year term commencing upon board approval with one option to extend for 5 years at the monthly base rent of approximately $38,000 for a total annual base rent of approximately $457,000.
Same House, same call. Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item.
Item 19 is an ordinance amending the planning code to increase the transportation sustainability fee by $5 to $24.04 for non-residential projects larger than 99,999 gross square feet, except in the Central Soma Plan area where the fee for such projects would be increased by $2 to $21.04 and making appropriate findings.
Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank the members of the Land Use Committee, Chair Tang, Supervisors Kim and Safai, for forwarding this to the full board with recommendation, and also thank the members of the Planning Commission that unanimously recommended this legislation. It was not intended, and indeed the language in the ordinance specifically refers to development agreements that have heretofore been approved by this board and would exempt those. However, the language in the 2 development agreements that we just approved is such that we need some clarifying language. I'm referring to Mission Bay and Pier 70. And so I would like to orally direct the city attorney, who is happy to rise, to make sure there's an amendment that indicates that Mission Bay and Pier 70, the 2 development agreements that we have already approved, would not be subject to the new TSF. And I know that Deputy City Attorney Givner is working with another Deputy City Attorney, and if we authorize that verbally, they can incorporate that additional clarification. And with that, Madam President, I would defer to Deputy City Attorney Givner.
Mr. Givner.
Deputy City Attorney John Givner, just as Supervisor Peskin said, although we don't have the language here before you, it would be a new uncodified section that essentially says that this new fee will not apply to projects with development agreements that have been approved by the board by a certain date, probably end of January of this year.
So it's appropriate for us to approve that verbally without having the written language before us.
That's right, because the direction from the board is clear and we can simply add a sentence to the ordinance.
Even without a specific date.
The date I think that Supervisor Peskin is proposing is prior to January 30th, 2018, which would cover those projects.
Okay. So Supervisor Peskin has moved the amendment. Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Ronan. Colleagues, can we take the amendment without objection? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you, and I'm just going to repeat some of the comments I made in Land Use Committee, and of course I fully understand why Supervisor Peskin has proposed this particular increase to the transportation sustainability fee. However, I did want to make some comments in light of the fact that I did vote against the increase shortly after we just passed the TSF by Supervisor proposed at that time, which was also a $5 increase to the fee by former Supervisor Avalos. This will, with the exemption or the $2 fee within Central Soma and the $5 fee elsewhere, will generate only about $11 million additional revenue. And also I wanted to note that the Controller's Office will be doing an analysis of all the impact fees next year, which they do every 5 years. And again, the next one is coming up next year. and the feasibility analysis was just done in 2015. And fundamentally, I don't agree with just trying to change it without all of the analysis done, whether it's the feasibility or the impact fees analysis. However, given that we did not hear from other, I suppose, developers during our land use committee hearing, I will agree to this today, but I would hope that moving forward, we would really look at analysis, whether from our controller's office or other feasibility studies before we go ahead and just change the TSF kind of midway. So just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang, and I'd like to associate myself with her comments as well. Seeing no other names on the roster, colleagues, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the ordinance as amended passes on the first reading unanimously. Item number 20.
Item number 20 is a resolution urging the Recreation and Park Commission to remove the name of Julius Kahn from the playground located at West Pacific Avenue and Spruce Street, and to rename the playground to recognize the value of immigrants and multicultural diversity.
Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, I sponsored this community-driven resolution to remove a racist, anti-Asian legacy from one of our city's public playgrounds, the Julius Kahn Playground in the Presidio, because I believe that San Francisco's values are ones of tolerance, inclusion, and diversity. Our parks and open spaces are meant to be welcoming and open for all to enjoy regardless of race, religion, gender, or other differences. However, former Congressman Julius Kahn's anti-Asian immigration policies during the early 1900s did not espouse the values that San Francisco stands for today. Values of respect for diversity, tolerance, inclusion, appreciation of the many contributions of our immigrant communities. Instead, Julius Kahn's bill made permanent the Chinese Exclusion Act. He further targeted other Asian communities by advocating for legislation to also include Filipinos, Japanese, and Indians from entering the United States. These anti-Asian immigration policies impacted my family personally, as my father was a paper son himself. And as a third-generation native San Franciscan and proud Chinese American, I am honored to be a sponsor of this legislation and the community effort to rewrite our history and start the Recreation and Parks Commission's community process to select a new, more inclusive name for the playground, a name that we can all feel proud of. I want to thank my colleague, co-sponsor, Supervisor Ronan, for sending this out of committee with a positive recommendation. I also want to thank Supervisor Stephanie's support letter since this playground is in her district. Recreation and Parks Commissioner Alan Lowe and his colleagues Lindsay Kwok and Linda Zhang for leading the charge in organizing the community and bringing Julius Kahn's legacy to my attention. And in addition, I want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor Fuhrer, Peskin, and Kim. Other community organizations I want to also thank as they have stepped up: Chinese Historical Society of America, Chinese for Affirmative Action, Asian American Bar Association of the Bay Area. And I also want to thank Rec and Park Phil Ginsburg and his staff for working together with us on this community effort. Colleagues, I hope to get your support today so we can stand up against racism, bigotry, and remind everyone that San Francisco will continue to become a beacon of tolerance, inclusion, and respect for diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Stephanie.
Thank you, President Breed. I want to thank my colleague, Supervisor Yee, for sponsoring this resolution. Julius Kahn is a hidden gem in my district, and our neighbors take pride in making the park an open and safe space for all who use it. And I fully support Supervisor Yee's resolution to change the name of this public park to better reflect the values of our city. I have spoken with several community associations and leaders who are also so proud to support this name change. Additionally, I have been in conversations with Phil Ginsburg, the general manager of the San Francisco department of our Recreation and Park Department, to ensure that we have an open and exclusive dialogue in the renaming process, and I look forward to those robust community discussions. And I just want to make sure that my name is added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Stephanie. Colleagues, seeing no other names on the roster, can we take this item, same house, same call? Without objection, the resolution is adopted unanimously. Next item.
Item 21 is a motion confirming the appointments of Cindy Elias, term ending April 30th, 2019, and John Hamasaki, term ending April 30th, 2022, to the Police Commission.
Seeing no names on the roster, Supervisor Sheehy.
Yes, thank you. So I'm happy to support Mr. Hamasaki, but I actually have never had a conversation or met with Ms. Elias. And there was an issue raised today in the Chronicle, and I would be very grateful if we could delay this for a week so that that opportunity would be possible. This was an LGBT seat, and I know that many in the community had an expectation that someone from the LGBT community could be put forward. We did have a candidate. That candidate, it was decided they had a conflict of interest, and now we have another issue around a conflict of interest. And again, this is not to say that I would not support this candidate, but I would appreciate the opportunity, the courtesy of an opportunity to meet with this individual. I know other members have raised that issue in the past when they have not had an opportunity to meet with someone. And so I think it would be, I would be grateful if we could just put this off for a week.
Supervisor Sheehy, are you asking that we divide the file and move one name forward and hold off on the other name?
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would be willing to support that, especially since we desperately need a quorum for the Police Commission. So is that a motion to, you want to divide the file and then move to continue the other part of the file? Is that what you want to do?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
So Supervisor Sheehy would like to divide the file, which divides the question, and would ask for a 1-week continuance on Cindy Elias and would like to move John Hamasaki forward. Is that correct? Okay.
Thank you.
So is there a second? If there isn't, I will second that.
Madam President, the file actually needs to, it has been duplicated, and we need to amend both motions, one for Cindy
The file
Elias.
has not been duplicated.
It's a duplication of the file.
So I didn't hear anyone duplicate the file.
I think that's the official request that Supervisor Sheehy made.
But it was to specifically divide the question because it's in one motion.
If I may,
Mr.
Deputy
Givner?
City Attorney John Givner. So division of the question is an act that the board takes when you want to take two votes on one item, up or down. Today, I understand Supervisor Sheehy is asking for an up or down vote only on Mr. Hamasaki's appointment and then wants to continue Ms. Elias's appointment. So you need two motions, one to pass that has Hamasaki's name and one to continue that has Elias's name. And so that would be a duplication of the files. Then you'd have two motions. You'd amend them both as the clerk suggests.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Well, then Supervisor Sheehy has made a motion to do just that. And is there a second? If not, I will second it. Supervisor Cohen.
Thank you. I'm just speaking against the motion. I just want to acknowledge the chair of the Rules Committee. For those of you that remember, it was a 7.5-hour hearing, an opportunity for everyone to have an opportunity to hear from both candidates. Both candidates were highly vetted and passed the mustard. I can't speak for other supervisors' inability to do their due diligence on their own, but I just want to recognize and affirm that we meaning myself and the Rules Committee, committed several hours of our time and our energy, and many of your aides that were not on the committee were paying attention and watching the hearing. Thoughtful questions were raised. Thoughtful questions were answered. Quite frankly, I think the issues that were raised in the Chronicle are a tinge bit sexist. You have a woman that is coming before us to be appointed on the Police Commission, and you're asking if there's a conflict of what her husband is making? Give me a break. Excuse me. Give me a break. It's absolutely ridiculous and it's insulting. And I ask colleagues that you please stand with these two names that we have fully vetted and support them today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Safai.
Yes, colleagues, this was a marathon meeting. I mean, we literally met for 7 hours and 45 minutes. We had 15 applicants. We had 4 applicants put in applications after the deadline. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that we have the best 2 applicants moving forward. That is not a knock on any of the other applicants that were there. I want to thank my fellow Rules Committee members, Supervisor Catherine Stephanie, Supervisor Norman Yee, and Supervisor Cohen, who sat in the entire meeting for 7 hours and 45 minutes, well, 47 to be exact. So let me just tell you what we used as a barometer to send these 2 applicants forward today. We wanted people that had a history of working in the community. We wanted people that had an understanding of how the San Francisco Police Department functions. We wanted people that understood what it means to do police reform. The Department of Justice had 272 recommendations. Each of these applicants went through every single recommendation thoroughly. I grilled every person prior to the hearing personally on every single aspect multiple times. And I will tell you, on top of that, they had been active in the police commission meetings. They had been active in the conversations more recently and over the last few years. And we wanted people that understood how all the different agencies in our city work and interface with both the police commission and the police department. So I can tell you again, with 100% certainty, and as well, understood how organized labor functions in this city. And a lot of you, for better or for worse, have heard me use the arguments about organized labor in the context of the policies that we make. And they, as the 2 new commissioners on this body, will be interfacing with an organized labor body in the city, Police Officers Association. And I feel that they will be approaching policy and approaching decisions and approaching disciplinary decisions in a fair and balanced manner. And I will say I agree with Supervisor Cohen that someone's spouse, someone's partner, someone's significant other should not be a reason to use someone as a conflict in any circumstance. So I do understand and respect the arguments that Supervisor Sheehy is making. I would have liked to have known a little bit in advance that there might be this conflict, and I think that is an important part of the conversation. But I will say I do support sending these 2 forward. So that's all. Thank you.
And thank you both for your comments, and we appreciate the hours of time put into going through this lengthy process to vet all of the candidates. But I do think that there's something important that Supervisor Sheehy has said, and that is the fact that this seat once was occupied by a member of the LGBTQ community, and that has to be acknowledged and should be addressed in your comments as well. Supervisor Ronan.
Yes, thank you. I'm also speaking against this motion. First, I have to thank all 4 supervisors who spent so much time at that really informative hearing. I spent a lot of time watching the hearing after the fact, and I also just want to give a special shout out to Supervisor Cohen for kind of leading that hearing and asking really, really hard and thorough questions of all 12 candidates. If it's our job to be prepared for the Board of Supervisors meetings, it's our job to meet with candidates, especially who reached out to all of us weeks ago. I talked to Ms. Elias, who told me she reached out to every single one of us, asking to meet several times. And if we didn't take that opportunity to meet over several weeks, then that's on us. Number 2, I just have to echo my colleague, Supervisor Cohen. I am so offended that a woman candidate with a distinguished career as a public defender, as an attorney in the California Labor Commission's office, is supposed to somehow talk about her husband and her husband's career while she is describing her own qualifications for a police commission seat. I think that is the epitome of sexism. I know that there's many male police commission candidates who've had other types of conflicts, who've never been questioned about their partners, careers and jobs. And I just find this entire attack and the article in the Chronicle absolutely insulting. And as a female supervisor, with my own distinguished record, I hope that nobody ever asks me about my husband's career when I'm applying for a seat on any body whatsoever. Number 3, this issue of this being an LGBT seat. First of all, I'm very happy and proud that Commissioner Petra de Jesus is a member of the queer community, and I think that perspective is really important, and it gives me a lot of calm to know that perspective from a lived experience is being valued and considered on the Police Commission. And while it would be great to have that lived experience in every position, that's not always possible. And as a Latina and Filipina woman, I think having that perspective on the Police Commission is also very important. As a person who spent 11 years of her life defending people of color and queer people as a public defender in our criminal justice system, I think that perspective is a really important perspective to bring. So while I think identity is important, I think it isn't more important than the underlying qualifications for a job and someone who has the passion, the heart, and the desire to serve in this unpaid role, to bring her lifetime of experience to this role to bridge gaps between communities that at this point have a lot of distrust with law enforcement. And I think Commissioner Elias or hopefully Commissioner Elias in a few minutes, is the type of person that is going to be able to bridge that gap. And then finally, I just want to say that in sitting down and in meeting with Commissioner Elias, I was blown away. It's not just your qualifications. It's not just what you put down on paper, what you do. It's someone who has the sort of nuanced perspective that can see through the BS, but also is able to bridge different communities and have that sort of sense of humor and sass that's able to deal in this really difficult role. I could not imagine a more qualified, a more exceptional police commissioner. I am so excited, Ms. Elias, that you have applied for this position, and I will be so proud to support you today.
Thank you. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President. 2 issues I want to lay out. One is separate and apart from the San Francisco Chronicle article. I think that giving due consideration to potential conflicts is very important for this body, and to that end, I want to say I have personally reached out to the Deputy City Attorney who looks at ethics issues, and am very pleased that actually both nominees went to the Deputy City Attorney to make sure that they do not have any inherent conflicts. It is true that there may be instances, in the same way that we all face those instances, where somebody might have to recuse themselves because of income from a spouse. And I think Ms. Elias is very cognizant of that fact and has done her due diligence with the city attorney, as has Mr. Hamasaki. So I wanted to rise and put that on the record. I generally, in instances like this, do want to defer to a colleague who wants a continuance. But given all of what's been going on around the police commission, and I realize that this is, a special day and it's election day, but the fact that we actually have at least temporarily turned down 2 mayoral nominees, the fact that this went to a 7-hour hearing, the fact that this has just been brought up at the board, I think it's important to send a signal and to get these folks on the commission. So with all sincere respect to my colleague from District 8, I will be joining Supervisor Cohen in opposing that motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you, President Bree. So I want to associate myself with many of the previous comments in regards to the candidate. It was a very long meeting. It was the longest meeting I've ever had in the Rules Committee, of serving on the Rules Committee for 3.5 years on one item. And the fact that, and and it was a good long meeting. I mean, the fact that we had so many good candidates was one of the reasons why I thought took so long, because we really wanted to get the best two candidates. And at the end of the day, it was these two candidates that we've moved forward, that floated to the top, that we were recommending, and I'm gonna stick with that. It was something that was important for us to get, and because as we know, we're trying to do a lot of reform at the police department, and these two candidates, to me, would be the strongest in terms of moving things forward, being able to compromise, being able to collaborate, being able to stand firm with what they believe in. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Fuhr.
Thank you very much, President Breed. I also just want to say that I really want to thank Supervisor Cohen for actually why the meeting was about 7.5 hours, because Supervisor Cohen actually grilled every single candidate so extensively. And knowing that this was such an important appointment, my staff actually watched the entire hearing, which was something that actually I would have expected of most supervisors. Also, I was able to meet with also Cindy Elias, and I know that is my job as a supervisor, to meet with appointees if I have any issues or questions, and especially in this appointment, which is so serious. I just also want to mention that, I know that this was an LGBT seat, and I think we actually, in good judgment, did that to ensure representation from the queer community. But I actually believe that our other appointee, who was of the queer community, actually does a very good representation on the police commission. And then I just want to say, as a woman of color, that I think these accusations that she may not be eligible because of the employment of her husband is completely sexist. I have been married for almost 37 years. I love my husband, but he does not own me, and he does not think for me, and I am a woman who can think for myself. And I believe, after speaking to Cindy Elias, that she is also a woman who can think for herself, has thought for herself, and actually can serve the residents of San Francisco very well. And so I do not agree with this motion. And colleagues, I ask you also to confirm these two appointees, because I do think they have been vetted thoroughly, and that we did thoughtful consideration about their qualifications and how they might serve the residents of San Francisco.
Thank you, Supervisor Fuhr. Supervisor Safai. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. I just first of all want to recognize the Rules Committee and Supervisor Malia Cohen. I watched most of the hearing, not the entire 7-hour hearing, but it was a great hearing, and I learned a tremendous amount from all of the great candidates that actually applied, and I thought it was a very difficult decision in the end to only select two of the folks that were incredibly passionate about the issues. Supervisor Cohen, you asked a lot of questions. I really appreciated it, all of the research and homework that you brought in, and also putting everyone to task, because I think that this is one of our most important citizen bodies, and we really have high expectations for our police commission to address some major societal challenges that I'm not sure any city has done a good job of addressing, which is how we make our city safer for everybody and ensure that the police is a part of that, but that we also work on reforming our department, again, to make sure that all members of our community feel safe when they see a police officer walk down the street, which is how I am privileged enough to feel when I see a police officer walking through the neighborhood. Some immense and challenging issues to go through. I do just want to note, as Supervisor Cohen has said a couple of times, this commission since January 31st has canceled half of their meetings. And this is with a full body of 7 members. And I do really look forward to this commission meeting again as soon as possible. I think it's important that we appoint these 2 members that have been fully vetted. But also that meetings are getting canceled long before this board did not appoint the 2 mayoral appointees. And so this is just it's a lot of work, and I know that you both know what you signed up for, but I do want to just thank you to Mr. Hamasaki this being your second time applying. I just have to appreciate your persistence. It just really shows how much you want to do this. This is a volunteer gig. We don't pay you to sit in these very long meetings, but I just appreciate your persistence in applying again. I will concur also with the statements made by Supervisor Cohen and Ronan on Ms. Elias. I'm really excited to see you on the commission, very excited to see a strong woman who clearly has a clear platform and concepts and ideas on how we can improve police-community relationships and really make this the best police department here in our country. So I'm happy to support these two nominations moving forward today. Finally, my last plea, not having been able to attend the Rules Committee, is to please try to keep the meetings in places where members of the public can attend. I was very disappointed that the Commission last year moved meetings mid-meeting so that members of the public could not provide testimony on controversial issues. I know it's difficult as a publicly elected official to listen to the many and variety of passionate opinions that people have, and sometimes it's, it gets, it's hard, it gets very difficult, but I really believe it's our duty to be there and to be as accessible as possible, and I really believe these two commissioners will ensure transparency and public access.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. Supervisor Sheehy.
I want to thank my colleagues for their comments and for all the hard work that they put into the hearing, but it's really challenging for me because we did have a candidate who seemed qualified from the community, and it wasn't until the hearing that there was any discussion of a conflict of interest with that candidate. And so I find it disappointing that we had a strong candidate that was eliminated at the 11th hour. And again, I'm not saying that it had to be somebody from the LGBT community, but I would have thought that we would have had the opportunity to have candidates that were strong within the mix. We had another candidate who submitted a day late, very strong candidate. That candidate was not allowed to be considered. And we just lost a port commissioner. We can't buy wedding cakes. I'm the last remaining member of the LGBT community here, and frankly, we're not necessarily feeling supported. So a continuance, because I did not have a chance to meet with this individual, does not mean that I will not support this individual, and, I did get the chance to talk to Mr. Hamasaki, and I really appreciated the effort that he put in to make sure that we got into contact. And it was a phone conversation, and I just, it's fine. I understand my colleagues' objections. The conflict of interest is of little relevance to me. What I'm really concerned about is that, I've got a community whose rights are being taken away at a national level. I've been in this, we've had a hate group get validated by this body. Where are we? Everybody says they're for our rights, but I don't see it.
Thank you, Supervisor Sheehy. And colleagues, on the motion to continue Cindy Elias.
Madam President, we need to take the motion to amend both motions first.
Okay, so we divided the file, and then specifically what I had repeated was that there was a desire to continue Cindy Elias for 1 week and to move John Hamasaki forward. So that wasn't sufficient for a motion and a second?
Yes, if you take them all together. Well, because you do need to do the motion. Yeah, the duplication comes first, and then you need to have each motion, one with Cindy Elias, one with John Hamasaki first. And that motion needs to be taken first before the continuance and the approvals.
Mr. Givner, can you please clarify, because it was my understanding that that was moved by Supervisor Sheehy, and I second that specific motion, so I don't understand why there's a need to separate those. The file was duplicated, the motion was moved and seconded, so what's the problem?
So the motion so Supervisor Sheehy, as a single supervisor's privilege, duplicated the file. He made a motion that would amend both versions so that one will have Mr. Hamasaki's name and one will have Ms. Elias's name. You seconded that motion. As Ms. Samara said that motion needs to be voted on, and then you'll have two separate documents, one with Mr. Hamasaki's name and one with Ms. Elias's name, and you can act on each of them separately.
Got it. Okay, so on the motion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On the motion to amend the motions, Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, no. Supervisor Tang.
No.
Tang, no. Supervisor Yee.
No.
Yee, no. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
No.
Cohen, no. Supervisor Fewer.
No.
Fewer, no. Supervisor Kim. Kim, no. Supervisor Peskin. Peskin, no. Supervisor Ronan.
No.
Ronan, no. Supervisor Safai.
No.
Safai, no. Supervisor Sheehy.
Yes.
Sheehy, aye. There are 2 ayes and 9 noes with Supervisor Stephanie, Tang, Yee, Cohen, Fewer, Kim, Peskin, Ronan, Safai in the dissent.
Okay, the motion fails. And Madam Clerk, on item number 21, seeing no names on the roster, please call the roll.
We still have 2 duplicated files, so it may be appropriate for Supervisor Sheehy to withdraw the motion to, or request to duplicate.
I'll withdraw the motion. Thank you.
Okay, and so now on the underlying motion 21, Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer.
Aye.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan.
Aye.
Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy.
Aye.
Sheehy, aye. There are 11 ayes.
The motion is approved unanimously. Madam Clerk, it is past 2:30, and we have 2:30 commendations. And so I'd like to recognize Supervisor Yee for the first commendation.
Thank you, President Bree. Colleagues, today I want to recognize the Department of Public Works staff, Christina Olea and Jimmer Casillo, who have been instrumental in making sure our youngest residents learn how to navigate our city streets safely and avoid traffic-related injuries. As you know, the 3 pillars of Division 0 are education, engineering, and enforcement. But we also know from data that over 20% of all resident pedestrian deaths occur among children 5 to 9 years old, which is why this program is designed for elementary school students. More than 1/3 of the injured pedestrians are children. In this age group, almost 60% of the pedestrian injuries and deaths occur when a child is crossing a road or heading to school. By state, California has the highest number of traffic-related fatalities, and by city, San Francisco and LA have the highest rates of pedestrian injuries and fatalities. According to the Department of Public Health Pedestrian Safety Project, most child pedestrians are injured on the way to and from school, particularly in the Western Addition, Mission District, Excelsior, Sunset, and southern end of 19th Avenue. These injuries and deaths are completely preventable. No person or family member should ever have to suffer from a traffic-related collision. So, as part of this education too, I found out actually something that LA had is a streetscape. And a few years back, when it was brought to my attention that this is a potential way to educate our children in San Francisco, I worked with our late former Mayor Lee to secure the funding for this project. And at the end of the day, we actually named it Ed's Neighborhood. So I want to also say this interactive life-size set has already been launched this year as a pilot at Gene Parker and at Commodore Slope Elementary Schools. And we are excited to roll it out to the rest of the San Francisco Unified School District elementary schools this fall. As you will see, I'm going to show a real short video of this so you know what I'm talking about. Is Jarlene here? Oh, Jarlene, can you just show it? Because this is
neighborhood to look and feel like San Francisco. And so our knowledge and our experience of our city streets and our sidewalks, I think, helped develop the design. And as you see, it's like a model of San Francisco. The ribbon cutting was the first time that we had children walk through Ed's neighborhood. And it was really exciting to see how much fun they had. They really, they were pointing out things that they recognized. I think they learned a lot. We asked kids how they got to school. And it was interesting to hear things that they notice about San Francisco streets.
I think this will have a great impact on the children who go through this tour, because they'll have knowledge of what they need to look for when they're navigating through the city. And it's better to teach these things at a young age, and they can take that when they're walking around in the real city.
Our intent is that Ed's neighborhood will last for years and years, that we'll continue each year to go to the schools teaching about safety in San Francisco.
So I want to say that was just a short clipping that we did, but this project could have fallen apart so easily. The original builders and designers that we wanted to use was in LA, and it didn't happen. And actually, DBW, and in particular these two individuals that we're honoring today, really stepped up and worked with our local designer and builder of this set. And also, once we built it, we had no staff really to make this happen in terms of who's going to bring the set to a particular place. We don't have a truck for it. We don't have any staff to actually give the children a tour. And these two people, they stepped up and said, hey, we'll do it. We'll do it, because I can see the benefit of this, and I really, really do appreciate it. I think it's just not me that's appreciating this. The two schools that we've had it at, the comments about you two, putting up the sets, taking the kids through it with so much enthusiasm, and I know you're going to be real sad when we have the Bay Area Community Resource Team actually do a lot of this work. So really, I want everybody to join me to really honor and acknowledge Christina and Jimmer's work.
President Breed, Supervisor Yee, and members of the board, thank you for this recognition. As a resident of San Francisco and a parent of young children, I'm proud to be a part of Ed's neighborhood. I'd like to thank Supervisor Yee for prioritizing funding for Ed's neighborhood and asking Public Works to bring it to life, and our Director Mohammed for providing leadership. It really was a team effort, and every bureau within Public Works helped to bring it to life. We also worked with the SFMTA, the Department of Public Health, and the school district as well. Our local design firm, LMNOP, did a great job with design and fabrication of Ed's neighborhood, and we look forward to seeing Ed's neighborhood in more schools next year.
Thank you, Supervisors. Thank you, Supervisor Yee, for bringing this project to San Francisco. In doing some of the tours, and also the Public Works team that put this thing together, it's a lot of work building this thing, putting it up. It takes about 2.5 hours. Taking it down is the same, and then we have the tours in between. Taking some of these tours, we've been focusing on K through second grade, and the excitement in these young children's eyes and their learning, and at the end, they're asking some really great questions, which is basically teaching me as well, because I'm learning from the questions that they're asking. Oh, I should add that into a tour, and bring in those comments and help them understand. So thank you very much. We appreciate having this here, and we look forward to having a pretty busy year with it next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Supervisor Cohen, you'd like to make some remarks?
Thank you very much, President Breed. I just want to recognize the outstanding works that the Department of Public Works is doing. Thank you very much to the leadership of Mohammed Nuru. I think that it's so appropriate and fitting that Ed's neighborhood is named after our mayor, Ed Lee, who also comes from Public Works. But I just want to acknowledge leadership within Christina Olia and Jim Mercasio. Thank you very much for dedicating your life and your talent to the city and to the future generations of San Francisco.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Our next commendation will be given by Supervisor Katie Tang.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Today, I'm very excited to be honoring David Allen, who is an educator and paraprofessional with the San Francisco Unified School District working at Independence High School. I'd like to ask him to please come on up. If you could join me for a round of applause. I also wanted to acknowledge that he's joined here today by Deborah Allen, his wife, Principal Anna Klafter, Assistant Principal Kelly Kruger. So thank you so much for being here. While I'm sure that he stands out every day in the classroom, it is what David did outside the classroom that I really want to highlight today here at the Board of Supervisors. As you all know, I've been very interested in working on issues around human trafficking, and it's unfortunately very prevalent in our society. But what is most alarming and what most people don't realize is just how often it actually occurs in our very own backyard right here in San Francisco. But thankfully, we are grateful that the San Francisco Unified School District takes this issue very seriously, and they have begun to provide school staff with special training so that all the educators and paraprofessionals and administrative staff know how to identify when students might be a victim of trafficking and how to respond if they believe this is the case. So one of the things that they do learn is to speak up if they notice something that's out of the ordinary, and this is exactly what David did. Now, shortly after he received his training from Principal Klafter, Mr. Allen, David recognized two of his teenage students exiting a building downtown that was known in the neighborhood for drug and sex trafficking activities. He noticed some other things in terms of the classroom as well. Now, he wasn't at work and wasn't sure whether he should report the incident or not, but he listened to his gut and recalled what he learned at the training and ultimately made the decision to report what he saw. And after he reported the incident, the principal worked very closely with the wellness staff at the school, and they brought in other community resources, which led to the students getting the help that they need. So David is just the kind of educator we need in our city, and he has been working with the school district for 10 years, beginning as a paraprofessional working with special needs students. And in his current role, he is working under the guidance of his principal and assistant principal and closely assisting Linda Sawamoto in tutoring math in their learning lab. David is involved with the Para to Teachers program offered by the San Francisco Unified School District, which allows him to be on a pathway to become a teacher. And after passing his entrance exams, David hopes to enter the credentialing program to become a high school special education teacher. So I definitely want to thank David for listening to his instincts, taking his training seriously, speaking up on behalf of his students, and ultimately saving their lives. So thank you so much, David, for being here so that we could recognize you today.
This one? Thank you, Supervisor Tang. And I would like to thank you and the city of San Francisco. And I believe in what you're trying to do with the sex trafficking, and I do care about our kids. And I'd like to thank Deborah, my wife, for her love and support, my principal, Anna Klafter, my assistant principal, Kelly Kruger, and Linda Sawamoto, who I work with very closely. And I'd like to thank them for their guidance to help me become the best educator that I can be. Thank you.
Congratulations again, Mr. Allen, and thank you so much for your service. Let's give him another round of applause. That concludes our commendations for today. Congratulations to all the honorees, and we truly appreciate what you continue to do to make San Francisco an amazing place for each and every one of us. And with that, we will return to our agenda. Madam Clerk, let's go to committee reports.
Committee reports. Item 22 was considered by the Land Use and Transportation Committee at a regular meeting on Monday, June 4th, 2018, and was forwarded as a committee report. Item 22 is a resolution authorizing the continued operation of the Navigation Center located at 1950 Mission Street through September 30th, 2018, and the continued operation of the Navigation Center located at 2012th Street through December 31st, 2021.
Okay, we have a different house. Madam Clerk, on item number 22, please call the roll.
Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang. Tang, absent. Supervisor Yee.
Aye.
Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen. Cohen, absent. Supervisor Fewer.
Aye.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan.
Aye.
Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. There are 10 ayes.
The resolution is adopted unanimously. Supervisor Peskin.
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to rescind the vote on item number 19.
Supervisor Peskin has made a motion to rescind the vote on item number 19, seconded by Supervisor Fewer. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, the motion is approved. Supervisor Peskin.
Madam President, I would like to change that verbal amendment from January 30th, 2018 to today's date, June the 5th of 2018, on the advice of legal counsel.
Is that most appropriate since this is the first reading? Does it matter, Mr. Givner?
It is appropriate just to capture the two development agreements that Supervisor Peskin was intending to capture with this amendment. So, yes, we would recommend today.
All right, Supervisor Peskin has made a motion to amend, seconded by Supervisor Yee. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, the motion is approved. And on the item as amended, can we take that same house, same call?
I think we have a different house. Katie is back.
No, she was on the last vote.
Without we can take that same house, same call. Without objection, the ordinance as amended passes unanimously on the first reading. All right, let's go to roll call for introductions.
First up on roll call is Supervisor Stephanie. Thank you. Supervisor Tang.
Thank you, and I'll speak more to this next week, but I just wanted to introduce a resolution very proudly co-sponsored by all the female supervisors on this board, reaffirming our commitment to women's access to affordable reproductive, family planning, and sexual health services in San Francisco. This is in light of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services proposal to prohibit federal Title X funding for clinics and other organizations that provide abortion or abortion-related services. And so we wanted to go on the record again, and we previously have done so as well here at the Board of Supervisors. With that, I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Tang. Supervisor Yee.
Thank you. Is it okay if I co-sponsor that, Supervisor Tang? I wasn't too sure.
All male colleagues are welcome to co-sponsor as well.
Thank you. I'd like to co-sponsor that. Colleagues, today I am introducing a resolution that means a lot to my family and myself. This resolution calls upon our Congress to award the Congressional Gold Medal to the Chinese American veterans of World War II. Last week, our country came together to commemorate Memorial Day to honor the fallen men and women who have sacrificed for this country. However, historically, there are so many communities that have made contributions with little or no credit. During World War II, more than 13,000 Chinese Americans served in all branches of the military, despite having only a population of 120,000, meaning over 10% of the population were served in the military during World War II. Now, that meant during this time, Asian Americans were faced with widespread blatant racism and discrimination. Nearly 40% of Chinese American soldiers were not native born. and were unable to fully naturalize until after the war ended because the Chinese Exclusion Act was still in effect. Like many groups, Chinese Americans fought for a country that refused to recognize or respect them. Chinese Americans fought in all theaters of war, including in New Guinea, Iwo Jima, Philippines, North Africa, Italy, Normandy, D-Day, invasion, and Battle of the Bulge. This recognition effort is long overdue and is part of a national movement to shed light on this very important part of the history. We currently have two congressional bills, H.R. 2358, introduced by Representative Ed Royce, and Senate Bill 1050, introduced by Senator Tammy Duckworth last May. However, these bills are stuck in committee. We are joining other city councils across the country, including Boston and New York, to join the call to recognize the heroes of our Chinese American community and honor them with the highest commendation that Congress can bestow to Chinese American World War II veterans. We urge our Congress to move swiftly, as many of these veterans are no longer alive to see this happen. And I'm aware of this because when they mentioned on there that there was a Tiger unit, which was a segregated flying Tiger unit, which was a segregated unit of Chinese Americans. There's actually a book that's been published to talk about this, and in the book I realized that it was my father-in-law that was in there. So I want to thank my co-sponsors, Supervisor Tang, Fior, and Kim, for joining me. I also want to acknowledge the Chinese American Citizens Alliance and the Chinese American World War II Veterans Recognition Project for the leadership initiative. Let us never forget the contributions of our community, and let us rise together in paying our respect. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Yee. Supervisor Cohen? Supervisor Cohen?
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Election Day. Yay. Anyone else excited? No? Okay. All right. I guess it's just me. Two things I want to talk about today. First of all, I'm calling for an audit for the Independent Investigations Bureau, also known as the IIB, which is housed in the District Attorney's Office. And the DA is our Chief Law Enforcement Officer. And with this audit, will help us bring greater transparency and accountability in officer-involved shootings. You see, what's going on is that there is approximately $2.7 million that this body has allocated to this bureau to provide an independent investigation every time an officer discharges his or her weapon. And I believe that it's time for us to call for a thorough review of how and where and when this money is being spent. Recently, as you know, District Attorney Gascon determined that he was unable to charge the officers involved in the fatal shootings of both Mario Woods and Luis Gongora Pat. The purpose of the IIB is to, and I quote, evaluate the evidence to determine whether an officer has violated the legal standard of objective reasonableness by discharging their weapon, end quote. I want to understand a little bit better how it is objectively reasonable to shoot someone 21 times. In the case of Mario Woods and in the case of Luis Gongora Pat, why did it take 2.5 years to announce the decision not to charge the officers? Are these investigations being conducted in the most efficient manner? How is the necessary evidence gathered to proceed with investigations, or are we just chasing a pipe dream? Is there no way to hold police officers accountable? These are some of the questions that I'm going to be looking for to determine the answers. Despite allocating millions of dollars to the district attorney's office to investigate officer-involved shootings, we still don't have the answer to this simple question. Do we hold police officers to a different standard of justice than the ones we hold other citizens? This audit will help us examine the policy and the procedures that are followed in their investigations so that we can take the necessary steps to address continued police violence. Thank you. If anyone would like to join me in this request for an audit and a review, please don't hesitate to add your name. The second piece that I'd like to discuss today is I'm introducing the cannabis tax legislation for the November ballot. Many of you know I've spent a considerable amount of time developing the equity program and working with our Office of Cannabis. And for several months, I've worked with the Cannabis Tax Working Group following the Cannabis Legalization Task Force and meeting with industry and community stakeholders. In building this tax, it was important that the city maintain patient access through the compassionate care framework. That is why we are leaving medical cannabis untaxed in San Francisco. And I want to acknowledge my colleague, Supervisor Jeff Sheehy, who has been a very, very strong and fervent supporter of this notion, and this tax will reflect that. We want to incentivize what we consider, or what we're calling upstream businesses, like cultivation, like manufacturing in San Francisco, ensuring that that made in SF continues to be a possibility and keeping specialized jobs in our city and county. The tax proposal features a small business exemption and a tiered rate that differentiates between retail and upstream businesses. We recognize the challenge of starting up in an entirely new industry in San Francisco, and quite frankly, we've watched our neighbors struggle with an overly burdensome 10% rate, crowding out well-intended operators. As we bring a complicated permit fee structure online, we want to make sure that we are not being overburdensome to those that try to play by the rules. We also want to be mindful that we're not giving a competitive advantage of those who continue to operate in the shadows and operate a business illegally. We've delayed the tax implementation until 2020, giving compliant operators the space to grow while we as a city prioritize bringing all operators into the sunlight and into compliance. I want to thank the members of the Cannabis Task Working Group, Deputy City Attorney Mo Jamil and Scott Reber. I want to also acknowledge the Controller's Office and Anika Chowdhury from the Mayor's Office. And I also recognize Supervisors Jeff Sheehy and his leadership, and of course, my legislative aide, Sophia Kittler. All of these folks have been instrumental in getting us to this point. Also recognizing Nicole Wheaton, who's also been instrumental in, Nicole Elliott from the Office of Cannabis. I look forward to your support on this measure. We will continue the discussions. We will have more discussions in July, and hopefully this will appear on the November ballot this year. Thank you. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Cohen. Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, today I am introducing an in memoriam for a longtime Richmond District resident, Kathleen Russell, who captured the true spirit of a San Franciscan. She was smart, kind, free-spirited, stayed engaged with local politics, supported local organizations, was a champion for animals, gave to those less fortunate, and wanted everyone to be treated fairly and humanely. Kathleen was an avid gardener and would literally stop and smell the roses in and around our glorious city parks and open spaces, as she truly enjoyed living in the magical city she called home for over 40 years. Kathleen walked the city every day, accompanied by her loyal terrier, Grace. She greeted everyone she met, from a tourist to a neighbor to a homeless person in need, with love and light. She gave her time and beauty to all and was beloved by the whole community. In 2014, Kathleen was awarded the Unsung Hero Award by San Francisco Beautiful for the daily care she gave to a small garden on the corner of Fulton and Stanton for over 30 years. Kathleen planted and maintained this area as it sat outside of the park gardener's area of focus. She even carried water to the plants from her home across the street when the sprinklers were turned off during the repeated droughts in California. In 2018, Kathleen was also honored by the San Francisco SPCA for her 30-plus years of selfless dedication to animals in their care and for her ongoing participation in the Animal-Assisted Therapy Program. Through this program, Kathleen and Grace comforted hundreds of patients in hospitals, nursing homes, senior centers, and psychiatric facilities in the Bay Area. As a longstanding member of the California Academy of Sciences and the DeYoung Museum and the Legion of Honor, Kathleen enjoyed visiting the rotating exhibits and would spend hours contemplating each work of art and shared these San Francisco gems with many of her out-of-town guests when they visited. Kathleen was proud to call San Francisco her home, and San Francisco, with all its beauty and charm, was an even better place for having Kathleen as one of its own. She passed away in her home on March 12, 2018, and will be remembered dearly by her community. The rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Fewer. Supervisor Kim. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. First of all, I'd like to join Supervisor Ronan in an in memoriam, which she will speak to for the passing at the age of 75, the incredible artist and person Renee Yanez. And then I want to say that I'm pleased to be introducing legislation today that is co-sponsored with Mayor Farrell to help accommodate some of the critical mixed-use and office development that will continue to provide a host of benefits for San Francisco's growing neighborhoods without undoing the important policies of 1986 Smart Growth Protections, Proposition M. I've discussed this matter with Supervisor Kim and hope that she too will be a co-sponsor. Prop M ensured that office creep did not decimate existing housing or incentivize overdevelopment of commercial buildings that could be housing for our residents. The legislation here would allow as much as 1.3 million square feet of office space that was previously converted to residential use to be reallocated to our office baseline as commercial space is available to be developed, which will pave the way for critical projects, including the preservation and rehabilitation of our world-renowned historic flower mart in the Kilroy development south of Market. And the rest I will submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Ronan.
Thank you. Today I have 3 items before I discuss the in memoriam for Renee Yanez. First is a request for a hearing on the Planning Department's 6-month report on interim zoning controls on the mission. I'm looking forward to hearing back from the community as we contemplate the more permanent controls. Second is an amendment to the Police Code, Article 43, which regulates harassment-free access to reproductive health care facilities. My office has been working with Planned Parenthood on Valencia to protect women who are having to run the gauntlet of harassment as they try to get vital health care services there. The current law requires police to provide a written warning before ordering dispersal of a gathering that is interfering with patient access. This is actually an anomaly and is not found anywhere else in the police code, so I'm amending the law to make it standard. And lastly, I'm introducing a resolution in opposition to a state proposition that will appear on the November ballot that would raise new hurdles for local jurisdictions to generate revenue through taxes and fees. The American Beverage Association has funded this to the tune of $4 million so far, along with some of the California's largest corporate interests through the California Business Roundtable. It would not only undo the recent California Supreme Court decision eliminating the supermajority requirement for initiatives placed on the ballot through voter petitions, but would further tie our hands by requiring a 2/3 majority for all new taxes, whether special or general, including a provision that would apply retroactively to propositions on today's ballot. It would eliminate the ability of cities to put a tax measure on the ballot without a two-thirds Board of Supervisors vote, and it would create an extraordinary burden on departments that depend on fees by requiring that they be calculated on actual costs rather than reasonable costs. The California League of Cities is opposing this measure, and other cities are passing similar resolutions. I want to thank the City Attorney's Office for flagging this, and to Supervisors Fewer and Sheehy for co-sponsoring. And then very sadly, with Supervisor, oh my God, thank you, Peskin. This is because today is election day, and I've been getting no sleep whatsoever. Sorry, my dear colleague. I would like to close today's meeting in honor of Rene Yanez, a dedicated artist, activist, and patron of the arts and the mission. He passed away on May 29th at the age of 75. When he was just a child, Rene and his family moved from Tijuana to San Diego. Before he could enroll in art school, Rene was drafted into the Vietnam War, where he was assigned to a medical unit. During his downtime, he sketched, and what seemed to be an interruption in his life plans turned into a formative moment when a lieutenant noticed his sketches and persuaded him to work with servicemen suffering from PTSD, where he could use his art to help them heal from trauma and violence of the war. This is where Rene first began to understand the power of art. This journey continued as Rene witnessed the civil rights movement unfold firsthand. Like many, he saw peaceful protesters beaten for participating in sit-in protest. And as he would later recount, there was so much hate, it affected my being. It politicized me. So when I got back, I had a different view on art. After being discharged from the military in the mid-60s, Rene invested his time into making art and giving a voice to the Mexican-American community in the Bay Area. He continued his study of art, enrolling in the San Francisco Art Institute in 1970. Rene worked on his most significant projects right here in San Francisco. Alongside several other Mexican-American artists, he helped found Galeria de la Raza in the Mission District, one of the city's most important cultural institutions. In 1972, he brought the traditional Mexican holiday of Dia de los Muertos to the Mission through art installations and exhibitions, which to this day shape how the holiday is celebrated in our city. He introduced the works of Frida Kahlo to the Bay Area and helped countless artists make their way through the city, always looking for new, hopeful creators and nurturing and developing their talents. He saw his work as a reflection of the distinctiveness of Mexican-American culture, something neither totally Mexican nor totally American, but its own character. In Rene's own words, I came to realize that not everything that happens in this country is hybrid. It's not totally pure. In fact, we are creating the culture here. While he has been a creative force in the San Francisco Bay Area for decades, Rene himself was an incredibly modest man. He told an interviewer that more than anything, he wants to be remembered for how lucky he was to have such good friends. Fittingly, he spent the last weeks of his life surrounded by close and dear friends. The city of San Francisco is honored to carry forward his powerful legacy. May you rest in peace and power, Rene Yanez. And the rest I submit.
Thank you, Supervisor Ronan. Supervisor Safai. Thank you. Supervisor Sheehy. Thank you. Mr. Chair, see no other names on the roster. That concludes our roll call for introductions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please call public comment.
At this time, the public may address the entire Board of Supervisors for up to 2 minutes on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Board, to include the April 24th, May 1st meeting minutes and the May 3rd special meeting minutes at the Budget and Finance Committee, and items 25 through 31 on the adoption without reference to committee calendar items. Public comment is not allowed when an item has been previously subject to public comment at a board committee, as in the case with the items on consent, new and unfinished business, or the committee report item. Pursuant to the board's rules, direct your remarks to the board as a whole, not to individual supervisors and not to the audience. Speakers using interpretation assistance will be allowed twice the amount of time. Thank you. First speaker, please.
Madam Clerk, before I talk, I would like to give my message to Supervisor Kim. أيها الإخوة العرب الموجودين معنا هنا في مدينة سان فرانسيسكو، رمضان كريم وكل سنة وانتم بألف خير وسلامة. وجه اليوم يونيو 5 يوم الامتحان، وزي ما بنقول يوم الامتحان الطالب فيه يكرم أو يهان. النهاردة بيعتبر آخر يوم للمحافظ مارك أوفيرو، واليوم الجديد للمحافظ الجديد سواء كان رجل أو امرأة حسب اختيارنا احنا لهم. ربنا يستر، وباقي السكان هم اللي هيختاروا الشخص اللي يقدر يحل محل المحافظ المتوفي إدلي. he lost his life، يعني باختصار مات من أجلنا، واحنا النهارده بنشكره هو والعيلة بتاعته على انه ضحى بحياته في سبيل انقاذ الكثير منا. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give my message to every one of you. Today is the last day for our mayor, Mark, and the new day for the new mayor who going to be man or woman. Doesn't matter to me, doesn't matter to all of us. We need mayor strong. He can understand and have courage to clean San Francisco street from the drug dealer and the drug addict. I would like to let everyone know that we need someone who can understand how we can treat us. We don't need that bullshit. We see a lot of bullshit. Sign, and we see some other paper, they talk about we do this, we do that. We don't need more bullshit. The bullshit we have full about it. Ladies and gentlemen, before I leave my spot, I would like to tell you congratulations to anyone who going to be supervisor or to be mayor today. Congratulations to Mr. Newsom and Fiona Ma. Thank you very much. God bless America and God bless every one of you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. I'm Peter Warfield, Executive Director of Library Users Association. The library desperately needs accountability. I want to thank the Budget and Finance Committee for its questions and comments to the library during budget hearings, and I hope that you continue to critique and question things the library is doing. Last week, the Library Commission unanimously approved a change in hours that chops 15 hours from the evening hours that the library is open. Those, in fact, are the hours that patrons have said they most want more of. The hours being cut are at Anza, the evening hours from 8 to 9, and in one case from 7 to 9 being cut are at Anza, Bernal Heights, Excelsior, Golden Gate Valley, Merced, North Beach, Presidio, Richmond, Senator Marks, Sunset, and Western Addition. And 3 of those libraries are losing an hour each from all of their evening hours. 2 of 2 evenings at Anza, 2 of 2 at North Beach, and all 3 of 3 evenings at Sunset are losing 1 hour and closing 8 instead of 9. This is the exact opposite of what the library's own surveys showed that the public wanted. The public said it was 51% in favor of more evenings or later hours, while only 32% wanted more morning or early hours or weekend hours. And yet all of the cuts and no ads are being provided in the opposite way than what the folks had said. There are alternatives to this, and I will have some ideas for how you might allocate the RFID money to get more hours, fine-free and fee-free system, and adding hours.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
On particularly solemn occasions in the Old Testament, you could put your hand you would swear to the Lord your God, and I don't take what I'm going to say lightly, and I'm going to put my hand on the Bible. I guess you put your left hand on the Bible, right, when you do swear, and then you raise your right hand. And I acknowledge, of course, the presence of the Almighty here. And if I'm going to lie to you, I'm in big trouble. I swear to the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that what you're about to hear is not a lie. It's true, and it happened to me yesterday. Okay? I was praying in a graveyard for direction as to, because Steam Master didn't have any carpets to clean, right? So I wanted to spend some time. I go out and tell people about Christ. I drive in front of this house, okay? I get out of the house, and I notice a sign that says, hatehasnohomehere.org. I walk up to the house to talk to the individual, and this individual goes to my church for some years. No lie. She knows the Word of God. She's heard the Word of God, okay? Now, I'm not saying that this is a Jesuit plant. Years ago, I preached a sermon on 50 years of the Church of Rome. How many have read 50 Years in the Church of Rome by Charles Chineke? Very powerful book. I couldn't put it down personally. It's one of the best about the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, because the man was a very good friend of the president. And he proves that the Jesuits assassinated Lincoln. And Chineke joined the Presbyterian Church, and I've mentioned to several members, it wouldn't surprise me if Jesuits come into the church, and I'm not saying this lady is a Jesuit plant, but it's going to be interesting Sunday. I'm really looking forward to it, because God is God, and the Word of God doesn't change because we want to be selfish or do what we want to do. Homosexuality is a sin, just like adultery. When we kicked out that guy for adultery.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Thomas McDonough. Fifth and Mission Garage is owned by the City and County of San Francisco. The city has contracted out to a parking operator to run what may be the biggest parking garage in the city. The parking garage is located in Yerba Buena Gardens in what is regarded as a safe and desirable neighborhood. My car has been broken into 3 times at that location, so needless to say, the car has been damaged and valuable items have been stolen. I believe the current manager of the property is terribly negligent. It's apparent that the current management is merely extracting as much money as they can from a trusting public, and that they are minimizing costs by cutting back on such basic things, elementary things, as security. I think their contract should be immediately cancelled. You should seek a contractor who does business in a responsible manner. In my current work as a tour guide, I represent San Francisco as a great city to visit. Do I need to adjust my presentation and inform global travelers that San Francisco's underbelly is actually falling apart at the seams? Welcome to the Wild West. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Res publica, res des populi, quum bene ac juste geritur, sive ab une rege, sive a paucis optimatibus, sive a universo populo, quum vero injustus et rex, quem tyrannum vaco, aut injusti optimatis, quorum consensus factio est, aut injustus ipse populus, qui nomen usitatem nullum reperio, nisi et etiam ipsum tyrannam adepellam, non iam vitiosa, sed omnino nulla res publica est, quoniam non est res populi, quoniam non est multitudo juris consensu et utilitatis communione sociata. A state is really a state, that is to say, the government of the affairs of the people when they are administered well and according to the rules of justice, either by a king or by the principal persons of the state, or the whole body of the people. But when the king is unjust, which I call a tyrant, or the principal persons are unjust, and by agreeing together form a faction, or even the body of the people are unjust, an abuse, for which there is no name that I know of, unless it be called a tyranny of the people from the moment they are unjust, because they are no longer a multitude of the people united together by a community of rights and interests. Cicero, res publica. Madam Clerk.
You still have.
Good afternoon, John William Templeton. San Francisco is the most segregated construction market in the country. There are about 120,000 construction workers in the area, only 600 African Americans from San Francisco working in the industry, and the proposed project labor agreement would make it worse. There's a new class of litigation that looks at the impact of public policy on creating inequity. It uses the 1981 Anti-Ku Klux Klan Act. And to move forward on this without adequate public representation and comment, it's going to leave the city with exposure on that and a number of other issues. So we urge you to take the time to make sure that all the perspectives of ending discrimination in the industry are taken into account. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors. My name is Sushil Jacob from Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights of the San Francisco Bay Area. We represent small women and minority-owned firms, often at the request of the city. We urge you to vote no on item 28 regarding fast-tracking the Project Labor Agreement Ordinance. Fast-tracking this consequential ordinance, authored by the now acting mayor, conveys disregard for the legitimate concerns of minority and women contractors. We are not asking you to oppose the PLA ordinance at this time. We are asking you to give the most vulnerable contractors time to participate in the public process of shaping it. The city's capital plan calls for $35 billion in capital improvements over the next 9 years. This presents a tremendous opportunity to achieve contracting equity for disadvantaged, vulnerable communities. Let's take the time to get this right. Please keep this ordinance in the GAO committee, and let's have a full and fair vetting of the proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Doug Parrish. I'm the president and CEO of Red Dipper. We are a LBE, DBE, SBE, small electrical contracting company. We recently got our contractor's license, and we asked the board to vote no on item 28, the motion to advance the proposed citywide PLA ordinance to a full board vote. This should not be fast-tracked under the tenure of an appointed caretaker mayor. Acting Mayor Farrell was placed as caretaker until the San Franciscans were able to elect a new mayor, rushing through a far-reaching piece of legislation that will touch on billions of contract dollars is undemocratic and violates the due process that should be granted to the smaller minority and women-owned contractors like myself. Fast-tracking this legislation by allowing it to be leapfrogged will leapfrog the process of committee hearings is not conducive to a meaningful process of working with minority contractors to find the right minimum threshold to ensure that other small businesses have an opportunity to get their foot in the door. We respectfully ask that you take actions that permit minority contractors and their employees to participate fully in the legislative process. As currently drafted, we are highly concerned that the proposed ordinance will result in harm to communities of color. We ask that for due process and fair consideration for the interests of minority, women, and small contractors. Lastly, I just want to point out that there's a current complaint with the San Francisco Unified School District. The city is already subject to a civil rights complaint related to the SF.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, Miguel Galarza with Yerba Buena Engineering. I've had the opportunity to speak to many of you about PLA, and I stand before you recognizing that the previous people who have stood before you and talked about different activities regarding the community. And I thought there, in talking to some of you supervisors, I recognized that I was getting feedback that the community was asking for too much, that the PLA was too big of a deal for the community to ask for. And I said to myself, when Doris Ward sat here and she said the community of color is not getting their fair share back in the 70s and 80s, was she asking for too much? When Harold G. with Asian Inc. was dealing with discrimination for Asian housing, was he asking for too much? When our brothers and sisters in the LBGP community, when they were asking for equal benefits for 12D and 12B, were they asking for too much? I say to you that we're not asking for anything. These are the rights that we've been given from this board to the community. What is being asked is for things to be taken away. And that's not fair, and that's not right, not without due process. This city is a light tower and a beacon of light that shines throughout the country, that this country follows what we do. And unfortunately, December 12th, our beacon of light was extinguished. And now we're waiting, and today and the next few days, we'll have a new beacon of light that can shine out to the community and give us hope and give us an opportunity to pass a PLA that works for all. Please defer this and vote no on 28. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Nina Tan. I'm the president of Pilot Construction Management of San Francisco LBE, MBE, and WBE contractor. I would like to express out the objection to the proposed PLA ordinance that public project is discriminated against a small contractor. The ordinance takes the employment opportunity away from the San Francisco residents. The ordinance will discriminate against all small local contractors who are not union, and that is majority of us. This ordinance was put together hastily without asking for any feedback from any LBE or micro LBE contractor, and it's just like an executive order. It is rushed and hastily put together, giving benefit to very few union contractors without any regards to what happened to the rest of the local small business contractor. I suggest that the city should adapt the $25 million contract threshold that Obama administration used for all federal construction contracts. Before the contract should be PLA contract. And city have a good program for LBE and small business, which was a local LBE 14B. And this is a successful mode for how the multiple government agency can help the citizen of a community be success. The existing LBE program do not push to request the member had to be union, and it's benefit to all small business and not only few. So I would like to please vote no on the number 28 PLA ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mei San. I'm here to tell all the supervisors for no for PLA. I am a single mother of 2 little kids. I'm currently working as a labor worker to support my 2 babies. If all citywide project requires PLA requirement, then my employer will reduce my hour deeply. And they have no choice and only hire union workers. How will I maintain income for my family? As for the union workers, they can be from other states, not just local. It's very unfair to us that live and grew up in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, President Breed, Supervisors Safai, Ronan, Shi, Peskin, Kim, Cohen, Yi, Tang, Viewer, and Stephanie. My name is Lamar Haystack. I'm with Asian Incorporated, and we work very closely with the Asian American Contractors Association. This morning, I sent the following email to Supervisor Jane Kim. I'm very, very pleased to have known you and to have been your constituent for years. Hello, Supervisor Kim. We are highly concerned about item 28 on today's BOS agenda, a motion to pull the proposed citywide project labor agreement for public works or other improvement projects from the Government Audit and Oversight Committee, which you chair. We ask that you exercise your discretion to schedule a hearing on the matter at the June 20th meeting of the Government Audit and Oversight Committee. On April 21st, at a civic engagement forum hosted by Asian Inc., and held in partnership with the Asian American Contractors Association, you addressed the PLA issue as follows, quote, "The PLA has not been passed yet. We're currently in discussions about the right size for public works projects. I look forward to working with you on figuring out the right size for us to open opportunities and doors for minority contractors and their employees, who tend to be people of color," end quote. Fast-tracking the legislation by allowing it to leapfrog the committee you chair is not conducive to a meaningful process of, quote, "working with minority contractors to find the right minimum threshold to ensure they have an opportunity to get their foot in the door." Therefore, we respectfully ask that you take actions that permit minority contractors and their employees to participate fully in this legislative process. And I wish you all a very happy Election Day, a celebration of democracy. Let us celebrate democracy by ensuring full due process of our constituents here. As currently drafted, we are highly concerned that the proposed ordinance will result in harm to communities of color.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Michael Mao. I am speaking on behalf of the Asian American Contractors Association. I'm part of the leadership team. I would like to echo the comments of the previous speakers. We believe the board should vote no on item 28 to advance the proposed citywide PLA ordinance to a full vote of the board. In essence, fast-tracking this legislation and bypassing the committee hearings and having debate at that level, we believe it lacks transparency. It lacks due process. It's just not the right way to pass legislation that is this important, that will affect so many people, so many businesses here in San Francisco. The small business community always understood that this legislation would have that full debate and would allow a process to reach out to our small business community. We don't think that has happened. As well as AACA, I'm also a member of the San Francisco Council of District Merchants Association. I'm a board member of SAMBA, the South of Market Business Association. It's not even on SAMBA's radar or other merchant groups, small business groups in San Francisco. So if that reach out has not occurred, I think that's a fundamental flaw. It is a reason why it should not be fast-tracked. Lastly, I would simply indicate that a PLA is a complicated process. It has always merited a lot of debate, pros and cons. And unless each of the supervisors here today has actually read through the ordinance and is familiar with the pros and cons from the union side as well as from the open shop side, unless you know both sides, it should not be approved. And we ask you to vote no on item 28. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Girard. I'm the president of GECMS, small business here located in the Bayview area. I'm here today to, in my own humble way, to ask that you slow down this, what seems to be a fast-track process on legislation that has nothing but dire consequences for small businesses such as mine. I consider myself semi-successful in this business, but it's not because I had a level playing field that I successfully navigated. It was tough. And I believe that this type of legislation reduces, not expands the pool of companies like myself that are able to compete for business here in the city. I think at the end of the day, what you're looking for is a strong and robust pool of small businesses, businesses that will someday will also contribute to becoming dues-paying members of the union, and also providing small business jobs, opportunities to other small businesses, as well as jobs to your constituents. So we all want the same thing. We believe that to fast-track this process, though, is probably not going to get you to where you want to be. I would advocate that we really take the time to really look at the impact and anything that at the end of the day reduces the number of businesses that are out there is not really what you want to do, and I believe that with data you will see that this is exactly what will happen. And so I again ask that you would really consider the impacts of what this legislation will do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Charles Jones with YM Construction. This is a little emotional right now, but I want to share this one thing with you. I sat up in here for the very first time, and I heard everyone's fighting. Everyone had a fight that they were presenting. Now we need y'all to fight with us, or I'm out of business. What I'm going to tell my kids, what I'm going to tell my community, and it's just going to affect everyone. So we need y'all to have a heart and do the right thing. An American can be great. It's just through San Francisco. So let's go. We need y'all right now. Slow it down. It's all right. Slow it down. I'm planning on going union one day. Right now, the city doesn't pay me. It takes me like 2 or 3 months to get paid. The union want their money every month, or it's off with your head. So, or they need to start a program where, okay, we can guide small businesses to become successful in the union. So we need y'all right now. Just slow it down, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, President Breed and members of the San Francisco County Board of Supervisors. Nicole Gehring with Associated Builders and Contractors. We represent several large, small, diverse minority companies in San Francisco and their workforce, all of their residents who live here and are working here and would like to continue to work here. Project labor agreements hurt the community. None of the community can work. I spent the last year with several of the speakers today, meeting with many of you from the Board of Supervisors, and what we heard every time was, have you read the document? No, we have not read the document. So we have a document before us today that apparently has not been read by the Board of Supervisors. There is extreme language in here on section 4 and 5 that all workers need to be hired from union hiring halls. So all of the rest of the workers in the community all of a sudden now can't work in San Francisco. And the apprentices that they're using, the apprentices here from San Francisco are hurt now and can't work in their community because they are not part of joint apprenticeship programs. If you look at how this has impacted many of the cities who have tried to do this in Northern California, it's been an absolute complete disaster. Let's just take the recent PLA failure at the city of Concord on a very small paving project with an engineer's estimate of $2.5 million. They only had 2 bids, and the bids were 5 times the engineer's estimate, came in at $10 million. The bids had to be rejected across the communities, Stockton, San Leandro. This is a terrible policy. I would encourage you to vote no on item 28 today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors, President Breed, Supervisor Fuhrer, Supervisor Yee, Supervisor Tang, Supervisor Kim, Supervisor Peskin, Supervisor Ronan, and the rest of our Board of Supervisors. My name is Bayard Fong. I'm a 4th-generation San Franciscan. I've had the privilege of serving the city through the San Francisco Human Rights Commission from 1983 to last June of 2017 as a contract compliance officer. In my role there, going back to '83, we got complaints from our minority women-owned firms that they weren't getting equal access to contracting. So the Board of Supervisors, with the leadership of Supervisor Ward and Kennedy, called for a study. The study took a good year to find out what was happening to city contracts for the year '83-'84. They found that less than 2% of all contracts were going to minority and women-owned firms. They established, we need to establish an ordinance to make the system more fair. And from that period on, growing 12D, 12DA, 14A, 14B, with every effort to reduce the burdens against small businesses and minority and women-owned firms, and to increase their opportunity to grow and develop. Through the help of the HRC, LB Advisory Committee, and MBWB advisory committees, a lot of input and growth over the programs over the years. The community strongly encourages taking out the obstacles for inclusion of minority Asian Pacific Islanders, Black and African American businesses, Latino and Hispanic businesses.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
I'm a certified small business by the state of California. I'm a woman-owned business. I've been in business for over 15 years, and during that time, I've always had at least 2 install crews here in San Francisco. I've built the Prospect, part of the Prospect, and I've also just finished a China Live. I finish on time, I finish on budget, and my crews are safe. I hire my staff and my employees from San Francisco, not necessarily all of them, but I look in San Francisco first. I train your local workforce. I'm a merit shop. I'm not signatory to a union. I do my work for 15 to 20% less than what unions would be charging. I am not doing public works right now because there's language that's written into the PLAs that prevents me from bidding, although they'll tell you that I'm bidding. Why is it okay for you to use all of your small business services every day? We build your homes, we do your repairs, and then we can't bid on your public works. That's discrimination. We are not your underground economy, as the unions try to tell you. We are your economy. So when you discriminate against us, you're discriminating against all the services and all your businesses here locally that you use. Please do not fast track item 28. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Supervisor President Breed, colleagues, supervisors, staff, members of the public. Leland Francois, on behalf of World Environment Day, today, June the 5th. And it's been this way since 1974. Let me share with you just a couple of facts and within the allotted couple of minutes. Ravenswood Garden Kits products is what you see before you. I decided to bring it before you today rather than post my UN activity, World Environment activity online. I want to bring it to you and show you exactly what's taking place out there with a lot of us NGOs. Ravenswood, California is historically connected to San Francisco by way of the United Nations and also by way of Oakland. These products are registered with the United Nations Procurement Department under registration number 120512. These colors are official Sherwin-Williams blue colors, sky blue colors. These were the same official colors used by the United Nations when they signed the declaration in 1945. I came through here in San Francisco during the early 1990s when San Francisco was declared as, or the United Nations declared, the decade of the homeless, 1990. There's a lot more to be told about what has happened to the UN declared decade of the homeless, for the homeless. Here it is in 2018, we still don't have a viable solutions for homelessness, except we do. I'm returning back to San Francisco with hopes that I can pick up where I left off in 1992 and share with you some of my ideas and my concepts I have in support of the United Nations, which is headquartered, United Nations Environment Program, which is headquartered in Nairobi, Kenya, Africa. The materials I left with you, feel free to include your business cards, send it to my Ravenswood address, Ravenswood, California address, and I'll be glad to share some additional information with you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, President Breed and Board of Supervisors, and happy Election Day. My name is Hong Mei Peng, and I'm the Director of Advocacy at Chinese for Affirmative Action. We are here to ask the board to vote no on agenda item 28 and make the proposed ordinance go through normal means through the GAO committee. For those of you who don't know, CAA is a community civil rights organization with 49 years of history serving low-income, limited English proficient immigrant families through our workforce development, job readiness, training work, and we also engage in advocacy on the citywide level. Our work has informed existing local hiring laws and practices, ones that the city consistently over the course of last few decades invested in. And these laws and practices are in place to address inequity in job access for historically disadvantaged and marginalized communities, such as immigrants, formerly incarcerated, homeless, and at-risk San Francisco residents. While we value the need for increased labor protections and workers' rights, the motion to leapfrog and bypass committee is a rush procedural anomaly, and it would undercut community input in this significant legislative process. Given the gravity of this legislation, such a decision could further tip the scale against communities that already face multiple barriers and employment due to systemic inequity. If the motion fails today, community input would contribute to a more transparent process that can yield a fully informed and beneficial policy that includes best practices that would address and also incorporate other best practices from municipalities across the country so that good jobs are available for all of San Francisco workers. We look forward to continued meaningful engagement on this issue, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Supervisors, Michael Terrio, San Francisco Building and Construction Trades Council. I actually welcome the presence of Ms. Gehring at this meeting from the Associated Builders and Contractors, and I hear with interest that she's been visiting some of you. That is a national organization that gives a 100% legislative rating to Jeff Sessions and a 0% rating to Nancy Pelosi. That is a matter of record. You can look it up. And that gives, I think, a particular cast to the opposition to this particular policy, and a cast to the fear-mongering you're hearing the results of here. A project labor agreement policy does not exclude small contractors. It does not exclude minority contractors. It does not exclude women contractors. I have provided almost all of you with materials that demonstrate that amply. You know that is simply untrue. The matter of a threshold doesn't speak to particular provisions in a PLA that might have that exclusionary effect. It says, let's just avoid any discussion of it whatsoever. We have met for months with the city administrator asking for specific issues that might be exclusionary toward small contractors in a project labor agreement, and we have heard virtually nothing in that regard. So the policy you have before you incorporates many movements by us in the direction of the city administrator and others to try to accommodate what concerns we could identify. I want to assure absolutely the small contractors here that we will work with them. The monthly payment you heard about is not a payment to the unions. It is a payment for health care. It is a payment for pensions. It is a payment for workers. That is what we in the union stand for. That is what we ask you to stand for. And we don't think that has to be done at the expense of small business, but we can work together and profit together. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Tony Rodriguez, and I represent Local 43, Fire Sprinkler Union. We do work in all 9 Bay Area counties. I've done this position for 11 years. For 11 years, I've dealt with project labor agreements all over the Bay Area, and they've been initiated by public agencies, private developers, or contractors, or we've initiated it. But the point is, they work. They've worked for the 11 years, and people keep coming back to do them. Why? If they didn't work, then we wouldn't have been doing them, and they wouldn't be going on right now. The thing about fast track, I honestly believe that when this first came up and you all stood in front of the stairs and said how great this was for the workers, we could have pushed it through, but the city administration wanted to wait, so we waited. So we weren't fast tracking. And the last thing I'll say is that we have, in my union, we have, it's here somewhere. Anyway, we have about 50 contractors that are signatory to our union. I've been in my union for 35 years, and 31 of those contractors were former workers who decided to go into business for themselves, and they were they're making a living. They decided to stay union, and so when I hear about small contractors or small businesses, we have LBEs. It all works. It's just an equal. It's a protection for the workers is what the PLA is about. And I think anybody who is against the PLA is really wanting to continue to abuse and take advantage of the workers. And I think everyone here really said they were for protecting the workers when we presented this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Happy Election Day. My name is Juliana Choi Summer. I'm not up here today to discuss the merits of PLA. We shouldn't be doing this today. I don't want to discuss the merits of PLA next week either, because we need more time. You've seen all the speakers that have gone ahead of me. We need a bit more time. Listen, small businesses, we don't have lawyers on staff. We don't have people that can come to City Hall on our behalf. We have to take time off work. These guys are busy. So that's why you may not have heard from them yet. You will hear from them. We need to slow it down a little bit. There are a lot of folks that want to chime in, so let's just allow them to do so. Please vote no on item 28. We're having good conversations now, but I don't think we can complete it in a week. So let's keep going with it. Please vote no on 28. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board of Supervisors, John Doherty with Electrical Workers Local 6. I represent 2,500 electrical workers here in town. I'm here to speak in favor of item 28. We've heard a bunch of people say no, but I'll say yes. And Mike touched most of the issues that we would normally hit, as did Tony. But there's a couple other things that came up. So we heard from the people from the ABC, and we heard other people talk about opportunity for people of color, for women, et cetera, across many conversations today, people from the LGBTQ community. IBW Local 6 in our apprenticeship for inside wiremen alone has more female apprentices than the ABC and WICA have in Northern California, just in San Francisco. Where's that opportunity? We go out, we recruit. We weren't a great organization forever, but we've made great strides. And whether it's YCD asking me to come out and speak to a classroom of 3 people prepping for our test, we go out and do it and we make that outreach. So we're there, we do work with the community, we are the community, our workers are. And then I heard Mr. Galarza speak. I know we're not supposed to address anybody else, but it reminded me of a speech that I heard as a kid growing up here in town at the Democratic Convention. There's another side to this shining city. And in this other side of this shining city, there are people that are getting robbed every day on public works projects. And the administrator's report that came out vastly underestimated it. We found more on 2 school projects, just electrical workers, than what they quoted. It's rampant. And without union workers on site, you won't be able to protect those workers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Wilson Chu. I'm with the Chinese American Democratic Club. We are also opposing the motion to pull the citywide PLA from the government and from the government audit and oversight committee. We're not against the PLA. We're not. We believe that the unions do a lot of great things. But what we do need is we need opportunities for small businesses, which are predominant, which many of which are minority and women-owned businesses, to be able to grow and thrive, and then to become union signatories. It's a symbiotic process if it's done right. When irresponsible PLAs are put in place, when small businesses are locked out, many of which, again, are minority and women-owned. It affects the livelihoods of every single one of them that has put in blood and sweat into their businesses. I would urge the Board of Supervisors today to be able to deny the motion to call up the issue into the committee of the whole. And I would encourage you to allow the unions as well as the small contractors to be able to continue to negotiate to get it right. We got an equity program in other issues. We need an equity program in our PLAs. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Larry Mazzola, President of the San Francisco Building Trades. I'm here to speak on item 28 in support of item 28 for the project labor agreement. I've heard people say that spoke before me that this thing has been rushed through and they don't want it rushed through. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've been working on this for over a year and a half. We've had multiple meetings. Some of the people that spoke here against item 28 were actually in those meetings, and the building trades has made concessions, huge concessions on some parts. So we listened, and we decided the best thing to do is to meet with the small businesses and hear what their problems are, and we did that. And we did that multiple times, and we've made huge concessions. So it's not like this is just flying up here and no one's been talking about it. Otherwise, like a few of my guys said earlier, we would have pushed this through 6, 8, 9, 10 months ago. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to make sure everybody was heard. As far as the comments about people of color aren't getting due process, I agree with that. But I agree it's the people of color that are the workers that aren't getting due process. The workers that are being exploited on all these jobs. And that's what's happening. And those people need their voices heard, and that's what we're doing here today. They need more opportunities, and the opportunities come through the PLAs and the apprenticeship programs. So as far as I'm concerned, this PLA is about San Francisco workers, union and non-union alike, to make sure that they're getting what they're supposed to be getting by law and what's right for them. And isn't this city all about that? I think it is. The small businesses still can prosper under a project labor agreement. It's been done at the school district. It's been done at the PUC. I've seen it firsthand. So when they tell you they can't, they're lying. I urge you, please vote for this.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Tim Paulson with the San Francisco Building Trades Council. And I've only been doing this now officially for a couple of weeks, and most of you have known me for the last 13 years as the executive director of the San Francisco Labor Council, and I've made a switch to work with my brothers and sisters in the building trades. We've been watching on behalf of the Labor Council. This has been going on for a long time, and we've actually been, when I've worked at the Labor Council, in the meetings that some of my brothers have been and sisters have been talking about recently, and that is to make sure that this is done right. This has been in committee. I was just asking because I wasn't there day to day on it. This has been in committee for over a year, and there have been many amendments made. And at the Labor Council, we were pretty frustrated that this was taking so long. So we had a plan where we were going to have our hearing very, very soon, like next week, and that was the plan that was going to move forward. And there was going to be a hearing. There was going to be the final big hearing where we were going to all be able to talk about the issues that we wanted to. There have been amendments galore that the Building Trades has worked with everybody in the community and with all of you, that the Labor Council was at some of these meetings at. And by the way, the Labor Council is 100% in support of this project labor agreement, all the unions, the 140. So it's time to move this forward. This is just looking like delay tactics to us when we find out that there's going to be yet another hearing and possibly other things moving on. So we're urging you to vote yes on 28, and let's get this process finalized after all these many, many, many months.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Supervisor, my name is Hanson Lee, and I have a sister, Dorman. We go to church together, and I wish to use her minutes, if that's okay.
Pause, but no, that's not allowed in here. You can use up your 2 minutes, and she may use hers.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess my minutes are suddenly cut in half. Supervisor, I've been here many, many times when I was president of the Asian American Contract Association. Let me remind you, that's item 28. There's a sponsor called Safia, Sheehan, Conan, Roman, Bree, Kim, Paskin. But it's very funny that origin of this bill actually is our mayor, Farrell. 4 years ago, I had the liver cancer. So I created this city mess. Take myself to the Native American Standing Rock. I found doing work there is way lot more thorough and wholehearted. But this week, I watched the movie of PBS, Chinese Exclusive Act. And what we are doing now is people of color exclusive act. And we are all raced to the bottom. This union brother told me they want to talk to us. I guess the city or the mayor don't want to including us. Race to the bottom. This mayor, you know, I wasn't a big fan of our Mayor Lee. But compared to this white mayor,
Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your comments. Madam President.
And they are working with white establishment.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time is up. I'm sorry. I apologize. Your time is up. We have to give everyone equal time. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Gilberti, it doesn't seem like 28 is ready to go, but I'm going to switch subjects. 50 years ago, there was another election, and a gentleman won the election and then lost his life. Robert Kennedy, what does it mean to be against communism if one's own system denies the value of the individual and gives all the power to the government, just as the communists do? The Cold War had long provided a cover for despotic U.S. allies to abuse their own populations, but Kennedy was declaring that those days must end. Everywhere the senator went, he challenged his white host. In the last years of Bobby Kennedy's became increasingly estranged from the Washington political life. His growing commitment to a new multiracial America, which allied him with the crusade of Martin Luther King Jr., was viewed by along with J. Edgar Hoover, regarded both men as dangerous, and his critique of the American foreign policy, which became more passionate as the war in Southeast Asia dragged on, drew the baleful eye of the White House and the CIA, which began spying on Kennedy as if he was a hostile foreign agent. Let's go. And then there was Mr. Garrison during this time and he came into the, that's not 30 seconds, is it? Okay, 25 seconds. Anyway, this, The Brothers, Hidden Agenda by David Talbot, an excellent book. I just finished it. We have gone a long way in the wrong direction. The labor guys right here are telling it. We need to firm up this country again and our city. It's not very well. Thank you. That was 2 minutes.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Madam President, Madam Clerk, I think we can vote on item 28 today. It seems like you're going to make somebody unhappy. I have an item for you that probably won't make anyone unhappy. It's probably uncontroversial. I sit in the back of the room and I kind of watch what's going well and what's not going well. And, you know, I noticed that there wasn't an in memoriam for Dwight Clark. There was? There should be an in memoriam for Dwight Clark. I mean, we actually had 30 years of football dominance in the Bay Area, if you include all the high school, the colleges, and the catch was a major part of that. And that had an economic and financial, you know, positive for the area as well.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Madam President.
Are there any other members of the public who'd like to provide public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is now closed.
And just for clarity, I submitted an in memoriam for Dwight Clark and did not make any comments. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the items for adoption without reference to committee.
Items 25 through 31 are being considered and comprised of for adoption without committee reference calendar. If a member requests, an item may be severed and considered separately.
Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you very much. I'd like to sever item number 28.
Okay, Supervisor Stephanie.
I'd like to sever item number 25, please.
Okay, seeing no other names on the roster. On the remaining items, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
On items 25 through 31, minus 25 and 28, Supervisor Stephanie. Stephanie, aye. Supervisor Tang.
Aye.
Tang, aye. Supervisor Yee. Yee, aye. Supervisor Breed.
Aye.
Breed, aye. Supervisor Cohen.
Aye.
Cohen, aye. Supervisor Fewer.
Aye.
Fewer, aye. Supervisor Kim. Kim, aye. Supervisor Peskin.
Aye.
Peskin, aye. Supervisor Ronan. Ronan, aye. Supervisor Safai. Safai, aye. Supervisor Sheehy. Sheehy, aye. There are 11 ayes.
Those items are adopted unanimously. Madam Clerk, please call item number 25.
Item number 25 is a resolution declaring support for Senate Bill 1186, the Stop Secret Surveillance Act, authored by Senator Jerry Hill, requiring law enforcement agencies to hold public hearings and generate surveillance use policies governing the information collected by surveillance technology.
Supervisor Stephanie.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to continue this item for 1 week.
Moved by Supervisor Stephanie to continue 1 week to the meeting of June 12th, 2018, seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, this item will be continued 1 week. Madam Clerk, please call item number 28.
Item number 28 is a motion calling from the Government Audit and Oversight Committee pursuant to Board Rule 3.37, the proposed ordinance file number 170205, amending the administrative code to require city-wide project labor agreement applicable to certain public work or improvement projects, and scheduling the board to sit as a committee of the whole on June 12, 2018 at 3:00 p.m. to hold a public hearing to consider the proposed ordinance.
Supervisor Fewer.
Thank you, President Breed. Colleagues, I am a strong supporter of labor, and I'm proud to have authored the largest and strongest project labor agreement that the San Francisco Unified School District has ever seen. That said, I have some questions coming up about the proposed citywide PLA before the board now. And frankly, I don't understand what the urgency is to pull this legislation from committee after 1.5 years of this sitting at the board. Many stakeholders are coming forward with concerns about this legislation that I think I need to be addressed through amendments, and these amendments are likely to be substantive, requiring discussion at more than one committee meeting. I also understand that there are many stakeholders who would like to weigh in on this legislation through public comment. Ultimately, the best process for this to happen is at committee, not at the full board, and I've spoken to our colleague, Supervisor Kim, who is committed to scheduling this legislation at the Government Audit and Oversight Committee on June 20th. The Comptroller's Office conducted a risk-benefit analysis of the proposed citywide PLA in March of 2016, where it acknowledged that this will result in increased costs to the city and county, and I have heard directly from Public Works, Rec and Park, and the City Administrator's Office that they expect increased costs. We have not seen a fiscal analysis of this legislation, and since it was moved from Budget and Finance, and I believe that this analysis is important to understand before taking action as a board, as the fiscal impact could be considerable. I also do not understand what the impact of this legislation would be on small contractors, particularly small businesses owned by women and people of color. After hearing serious concerns from dozens of small contractors, this issue deserves further discussion. In particular, I don't believe this PLA, as currently written, addresses my concern about pathways to good jobs for formerly incarcerated people in San Francisco's construction industry as disadvantaged workers. For all these reasons, colleagues, I urge you to vote no on this item today to allow further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fewer. Supervisor Peskin.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, first of all, let me concur with Supervisor Fewer, and it is not what we're discussing here is whether or not we're going to have a committee meeting in committee or a committee meeting at the Board of Supervisors as a whole. That's what's before us here today. And every once in a while, we actually just saw this a few weeks ago, it requires somebody, in this case Supervisor Safai, to move the process forward by, if you will, challenging us to a committee of the whole. But I think what this has brought about is the fact that there will be, on a date certain, I've heard actually two different dates, I've heard June the 11th and June the 20th. I personally would, and I will qualify that in a second, prefer June the 11th, which is actually a day earlier than the full board would have heard it on June the 12th. So that aside, I want to send a couple of messages because I want to pass a PLA. I would like to pass it soon. It has been sitting around for too long, and it has been sitting around for too long because no one has really, I think, done the tough work of convening the parties and hammering out the last few things that need to be hammered out. And so, yes, that is on a mayor, and we're having an election today, and it will be on whoever is the likely mayor in the days ahead. And I beseech the parties to do some really good work between now and 6 days from now, if that indeed, Supervisor Kim, the chair of GAO, is the date. And I also want to say, as a supervisor, when you have the city administrator, who we all voted unanimously to reappoint, and department heads coming and expressing concerns, my instinct is to say, okay, I need to get you in a room with Mr. Mazzola and Mr. Terrio, and let's iron these things out. That has clearly not, I don't want to say it hasn't happened, it just hasn't been successful yet, because I'm not sure exactly why, but I did ask actually Ms. Kelly if there were some meetings, and yes, they were, and they didn't go anywhere in one person's opinion. But I really think that it's incumbent that hard discussion happens. It's incumbent on the parties that hard discussion happens in the next few days. But I want to pass a PLA. I want to do it quickly. I think that it is right that it happen in committee. It is very extraordinary that we have a committee of the whole. And I hope that we can get this done next Monday or in the next couple of meetings of the GAO committee.
Thank you, Supervisor Peskin. Supervisor Safai.
Thank you, Madam President. Much of what I was going to say, Supervisor Peskin said. Just for clarity, the process of pulling something from a committee to the full board still allows for there to be a committee hearing. That's why we call it a committee of the whole. And this process, we have been meeting with many folks in the LBE community. We have been meeting with folks in the building trades. Myself and President Breed have met with city departments and the city administrator. And so, as Supervisor Peskin said, there has been progress. And so the amended version that you see in front of you today, from the perspective of the building trades, as you heard them say, has made some significant concessions on their side. That does not mean the debate is done. That means that we are going to have a committee hearing. And I met with 5 members of the folks from the LBE community, along with President Breed's staff, just last week or just this week, and we received even more comments, and we are still continuing the conversation, and we're happy to continue that conversation. I don't want to get into any of the merits or any of the policies of the PLA. That's not what's before us today. Before us today is scheduling. And Supervisor Kim and I had been in conversations. We had looked at multiple dates over the last 3 weeks. There wasn't an ability, given all the things that were going on, particularly today being election day, to find the right time. Meetings were going to happen. Those meetings were canceled. There was another one that was tomorrow. I think everyone would be on the floor exhausted, so that did not make sense either. So we had discussed having it on Monday, June the 11th. If that's the will of the chair of that committee, I will support that. And there will be a process. The idea that there would be no democracy in a committee of the whole is absolutely not true. That is something that was actually proposed just 2 weeks ago by Supervisor Fuhrer to have a conversation about apartments and operation and maintenance agreements. we were trying to have some scheduling conversations. We were able to resolve that, and we did have that committee hearing, and we moved the process forward. So I am in support of having it on June the 11th. I am in support of having a PLA. I am in support of respecting the great work that's been done in the history of the city to support LBEs and incorporating all that great work into something. But my perspective is the perspective and will always be the perspective of workers first. And that's how I approach this conversation.
Thank you, Supervisor Safai. And just for clarity, I sit on GAO committee, and I've made it clear that I will not be here on June 11th, but I am planning to attend the meeting on June 20th. Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. As chair of the committee, I just want to clarify that we are working to schedule this now on Monday, June 11th. We are still working with the clerk's office to confirm the agenda. Supervisor Peskin and I will be there, so it would be great to have a replacement so that we can walk around. But I do just want to warn members of the public, Supervisor Safai and I do sit on Land Use Committee at 1:30 p.m. So as much work as can happen on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to hammer this out and get to a consensus so that we can pass this out of committee on Monday, June 11th is appreciated. But we will be scheduling it. I think it's much more appropriate to be heard at committee than at the full Board of Supervisors, and I'm happy to schedule it.
Thank you, Supervisor Kim. So with that, Supervisor Safai, would you like to continue to support the Committee of the Whole?
Sure, I guess we can table that item. That's fine.
Okay. All right, a motion to table made by Supervisor Safai.
Yes.
Seconded by Supervisor Peskin. Colleagues, can we take that without objection? Without objection, this item is tabled. Madam Clerk, are there any other items before us today? Or please read the in memoriams.
Yes. Today's meeting will be adjourned in memory of the following beloved individuals: on behalf of President Breed, for the late Dwight Clark; on behalf of Supervisor Fewer, for the late Kathleen Russell; and on behalf of Supervisor Ronan, for the late Renee Yanez, including Supervisor Peskin.
Okay, Madam Clerk, are there any other items before us today?
That concludes our business for today.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today is Election Day. The polls will be open till 8 o'clock all over the city, including City Hall. And please make sure that you go out and vote and have a wonderful day. Thank you. We are adjourned.